Welcome back to DPRV TV viewers. It's Chris Nichols here.
And it's Jordan Drake here.
And we just released our Canon EOS R3, our hands-on first video of this
If you haven't watched it already, go watch that first.
Please
then come back
do.
Here.
Now, it was a pretty comprehensive video, but there's a lot to this camera. I remember playing with it, I was like, whoa, so many more questions than answers using this thing. Lots of new technology, lots of new features, and we figured you at home would also have a lot of questions. So we went through and saw what kind of stuff were we not able to cover in our video or didn't elaborate enough in our video. Sort of pulled those questions together. I'm going to answer some photography ones.
And I'll do some video ones.
So first question I want to answer, we got asked this quite a bit in a few different forms. Can the camera be charged via USB? And maybe more importantly, can you also use power banks through the USB to power the camera for longer periods of time? The basic answer is yes to both. Now here's the thing. For charging these cameras, it works basically the same as the EOS R5, R6, or 1DX series cameras where you need to use PD-rated chargers. Now, Canon do make one, which of course will work. Otherwise, it's kind of hit or miss. You're going to want to try your own particular PD-rated chargers just to verify that they are working for the camera, but it's fairly universal. However, what about power banks? Well, if they're strong, high amp power banks, they will run the camera. But keep in mind, you do have to have a battery in the camera at the same time, and you want it to have a bit of charge on it. But yeah, it will actually extend your battery life on the camera and let you shoot for longer periods of time or charge up a dead battery. And that is very useful considering the battery life on this camera is less than stellar. Now the next question that we saw and that we got quite a few asks for was something along the lines of, will the Canon EOS R3 work with any flash? Really any flash? And really, we're talking specifically in electronic shutter mode, because Canon does advertise a fairly impressive 180th of a second max flash sync. Now we have confirmed with Canon this will work with their TTL flashes, even the older ones, with proper sync. And we've also checked and confirmed that it'll work with manual flashes off of either the center pin or the PC sync port. So, think like studio strobes, things like that. The only thing that we still need to test further before we can confirm would be third-party TTL systems. Will they also sync up properly? We think they will, but we want to test that before we say for sure. So I think naturally there's going to be a lot of comparisons between the Sony A9 II and then the Canon EOS R3, as they're more lower megapixel cameras aimed at news gathering, sports, wildlife, that kind of stuff. And also talk about the comparable scan speeds of the sensors to kind of, get an idea of how do they handle things like rolling shutter in electronic shutter mode. So the A9 is going to be roughly around 160th of a second as a scan speed. And we're finding the EOS R3 is pushing a little bit faster than 180th. So it is a slight improvement. And frankly, never really saw a lot of rolling shutter issues shooting electronic shutter mode on the A9 series cameras, so the R3, very similar story. We really didn't have any problems with the testing we were doing. There's also a little bit of confusion out there with mechanical shutter speeds, sync speeds, and then the scan rates of these cameras. For example, people are saying, well, doesn't the Canon EOS R5 have a 1/200th of a maximum flash sync speed? And that's true, but that's not a scan rate, that's a sync speed, and that's in mechanical shutter mode. If we gave a comparison for the electronic scan speed of the EOS R5, it's much slower at a 60th of a second. So, in fact, cameras like the A9 II and the EOS R3 are approaching what other traditional cameras have been able to do in their mechanical shutter modes. This is really an achievement, but still it seems that the Sony A1 is the undisputed king of fast scan speeds. Now let's go over to Jordan and talk about video.
Now, after the R5 overheating debacle, a lot of the questions that I'm seeing are all related to the overheating on this camera, especially because I did get an overheat warning shooting 4K 120. But bear in mind that was after Chris had already been shooting stills with the camera for over an hour. The other thing we didn't test is to see how far we could keep shooting 4K 120 because we didn't want to overheat the camera and not be able to shoot stills while we were out there. That's something that we're going to test further. However, I do want to mention that my friend Gordon Laing over at Camera Labs was able to run some overheating tests on the more standard record modes. He did 4K 25p, just shooting right to the battery and card for over 2 hours, and by plugging it into USB power, as Chris already discussed, was able to get 6 hours. So it does look like 4K 120 is going to be the mode that could potentially lead to overheating. We also want to check out the 6K RAW recording once we get software support for that. But if you're using any of the standard 4K oversampled modes, which look absolutely fantastic, I don't think overheating is going to be a problem with this camera.
Now, of course, we got a lot of comments and questions. Is eye control autofocus a gimmick? Or a lot of people just stating that, yes, it absolutely is a gimmick. Now, is the CIA using it to scan your retinas and make a database? I can neither confirm nor deny that information. But as far as is it a gimmick, I would say no. I was actually really impressed with how it worked. It seemed very organic, very natural, and I went into it with quite a bit of healthy skepticism, especially since the older eye control system that, you know, we left off with back in 2004 never worked very well for me. Now, by far the question we probably got asked the most was, is eye control autofocus going to work with eyeglasses? And of course, I don't wear eyeglasses. I'm very fortunate that way, although I think it's coming pretty soon. But even I had some issues, so I want to start with that. So first off, I had to do multiple calibrations, and I had to absolutely make sure my eye was in a very central position in the EVF. Otherwise, it would often be looking in the wrong direction. So I had to calibrate positioning my eye in different parts of the eye cup to try to give the camera as much data as possible. But my success rate was high. Now, we do have a staff member, Richard Butler. He tested his camera both with and without his glasses on, and he actually said the success rate was good. But again, he had to calibrate the camera a lot. I think the key thing really is you need to do multiple calibrations under many different situations. Give the camera as much data as possible. And if, for example, you smoke a lot of weed and your eyes get red, or maybe you hit up a lot of mushrooms and your pupils are gigantic, you would still have to do multiple calibrations to really give the camera the data it needs. And even then, Jordan's wife, who hosts TCS TV, she has perfectly beautiful eyes. She tried getting the camera to calibrate, and she actually could not even get past the calibration phase.
Now my eyeballs unfortunately did not calibrate with it for some reason. We don't know if it's because it was pre-production or it's because I have beautiful long eyelashes that Dave doesn't have.
So I think it's much more universal than it used to be, but I think it's still going to be very specific down to who you are as an individual. All right, Jordan, so that pretty much does it, but one final, actually very important question.
Yes.
We were asked, did we like the camera? Do we see ourselves using it in the future? You know, is it something that we enjoyed? And I guess for my part, I actually enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed the golf ball texture, but with the soft smoothness of a well-made sex toy to it. I liked that the camera was smaller and lighter, even if it does have a battery grip that I'm not going to use. I didn't find it obtrusive. And the eye control autofocus was not a gimmick. I thought it was actually really quick to use and actually kind of fun to use. So,
yeah, and the whole time we were doing it, just kept talking about, oh man, love this eye control. I can't get enough. You want to go review another camera, Chris? I don't know. Is it going to have eye control?
It was eye control. It was so good.
And the thing for me is, this is, I would say, easily the most capable Canon mirrorless for video shooters. Right. And the R5 I always use in its 4K HQ mode because it's super sharp, but smaller file sizes than 8K. And I found this very comparable.
There's still a lot of questions that we want to answer. I mean, we didn't get a chance to test it for motorsports, and that's one of the key features of the new subject detect that they have there. So we want to do that. Of course, we want to do a full review on this camera and probably compare it against other cameras like the A9 and the A1, you know, which are also doing this sort of fast scanning electronic shutter kind of camera. But overall, yeah, a really enjoyable camera. I hope this answers a lot of questions you have. And if you guys have more questions, please do leave them in the comments below, and then we will answer those as well to the best of our ability.
We're going to try to get to as many of those questions as possible.
And as usual, please do throw some likes down there because that appeases our insecurities. Please subscribe to the channel for the exact same reason. Check out deepreview.com. There's tons of great articles, lots of information that's come out now about the new EOS R3 to give you all the information you're looking for. Otherwise, we shall see you so soon. Thank you so much.